Thank you for joining us. I think we have about 45 minutes together today, so we'll try to keep it. I know the advertisement for this session says Steve Brown's going to tell you all about ROI when it comes to AI. That is not true. Steve Brown has
false
two
advertising.
slides.
I'm out.
False advertising. The good news is you're in better company with my friend Joe Kennedy. So Joe Kennedy is one of the experts. I'll let him introduce himself in a minute. At Slalom to talk about this very exact thing. We have about 45 minutes, so we'll probably try to keep it somewhere between 30 and 45 and then let you ask questions. We do have a tool that we're going to demonstrate at the end. It's something that Slalom's built that I think is pretty cool. So cool we just started selling it to people, but what you'll see in this tool is we use Gen AI to run certain scenarios and use cases when it comes to how to understand what you go after first if you're trying to integrate AI into your business. So the main problem our customers have is it's real easy to get excited about all the things that we just heard, right? You're writing down every single tool, you're gonna go back to your office, you're gonna go back to your team and say, let's do it all. Curbing that enthusiasm, although we love it, keeps us employed, is the smartest thing you can do. What I mean by that is if you go try to do everything, you're gonna fail miserably. So how do you narrow that down is what we're gonna talk about today. I'll let you introduce yourself after
Sounds good.
my lovely 2 slides. Is this surprising to anyone? 30% of Gen AI POCs will be abandoned in 2025 because people don't have a strong business case.
I think to me the thing that's surprising about it is only 30%.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would anyone disagree with that statement? So we are a global company. We have lots of customers, and what we do very well is partner with people like Gartner and McKinsey and all the people we've been talking about to understand where the trends are at, how people are doing what they do, where they're falling short. And I would agree, the statistic to me seems a little low, but this is what the data is suggesting. Nonetheless, what's important here that you need to call out is having a strong business case. Understanding where you need to go, when you need to go there, how much you need to invest, and when. 29% of companies do not use a formal framework, meaning 60% of companies, 70% of companies do not. Is anyone in the room using some sort of systematic way to prioritize what they want to do for AI? Anybody? You are?
I would say, yeah, but I think really honestly assessing ROI and vendor selection is very, very difficult.
Yes.
And really being clear that what you want to do is actually possible at this very moment. And the investment of capital is the right spend right now. So I'm super excited to hear with you guys.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, for sure. Because let's be clear, I mean, you can give the, make sure this person's not in the room. I had a customer yesterday who, literally yesterday, sat down and they said they spent millions of dollars on a vendor that had sold them something, and then ended up spending millions of dollars rewinding that. So whether it's AI or any other vendor, and Slalom or not Slalom, picking the right partner to understand how to do these things is very important. Somebody else had a hand up over here. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we have a team with clinicians and business people and IT people, and we look at what our problems are and if there's a viable solution for that. And we've deployed quite a few things successfully, quite a few things unsuccessfully. So the comment that didn't think that 30% was higher, we've failed a much higher percentage of AI tools.
Well, you're in the right room then.
Yeah.
You're going to be smart when you get back. And then the last thing I'll say before I pass it over to Joe is 75% of companies expect it'll take more than a year to realize AI value. How does that resonate? So in your boardrooms or your meeting rooms or with your team, what's the overall sentiment of how long it's going to take to get true value back out of the investment, or even having those conversations? Does a year seem too long, too short?
Too short.
Too short? Okay.
My question would be, we talked earlier, there was a quote about, not much about the AI, it's more about the strategy of the business. Like I'm going and kind of what you're saying, I'm doing all these things versus taking the step back. So what do you think, if you kind of look at how many companies actually take the step back and try to fit the AI into their broader business strategy? That's
Bingo. So perfectly in line with the strategy.
yeah.
And what Joe's going to talk about is there's a way to think about going after things that don't have to be impossible to do. And what that means is maybe it takes 2 weeks, maybe it takes a week. Worst case scenario, it takes a couple months. But there are things that you can do that have low barriers of entry with a very, very high ROI. And when you think about incorporating AI into your business, making it the fundamental foundation or DNA in your core business model, building the momentum and getting the buy-in from your leadership team, from your own teams, getting the buy-in with yourself starts with picking the right small, smart things that are easy to implement, that do not take a year, that have a tremendous return in value. And that's what Joe's going to walk you through. So without further ado, Steve's done talking, and Joe, I'll pass it over to you.
Excellent. I'll jump in. Joe Kennedy. I lead our resources industry vertical for our Mountain West region. What does that mean? Resources. It's actually our mining, agriculture, energy, and natural resources. So any of our accounts that fall into that portfolio, they're ultimately I'm accountable for. And when I say accountable, it's bringing industry insights, making sure that we bring the right industry expertise, and then ultimately our client success. So I'm actually going back to, I think there were a couple of mentions around, hey, we've spent a lot of dollars and we're not getting the value out of the dollars we spent. I'm the one accountable for that. So if there's a challenge, I'm also there to say, what you're asking for is something, one, we're not ready to step behind because we don't think you can achieve the value that you're trying to get. So I'd much rather walk away from millions of dollars in consulting services because it's the right thing to do. And thank goodness I work for an organization that actually lets me do that, because it's not good for any of you, and it's not good for us at the end of the day. And that's all I'll kind of talk about from my role in Slalom, because really what I want you to walk away from today's conversation with is how can we best leverage our limited resources. And some of us, I'm assuming, are going to be small business owners, medium-sized companies, very large companies. These principles apply across the board. And your investment dollars, regardless of size and scale, you need to go through, well, we recommend you go through this process because ultimately we want to maximize the value for the investment you're making. And I think that's the key thing, is thinking through this. I'm going to kind of move around a little bit so I can, get interaction across the entire room. But really what we're looking to do is bridging that gap. So if you're like me and you heard all the exciting things you could be doing today, a lot of it was around personal productivity. A lot of these more advanced things are significantly heavier load from an investment perspective. But that's where this comes in, and saying, if I have a bucket of dollars that I'm allowed to invest, how do I make sure that I'm looking at the right things? So the first thing up here is value assessment. And you want to make sure it's being done from when we say unified value assessment, when you look across your organization, you've got sales, operations, marketing. If you're building a product, you got the production side, you've got your supply chain group. All of those organizations need to have a seat at the table to making sure when you're looking at how do I best invest our dollars, we're going to look at across all of those facets and weigh them equally against the total cost and the value that the organization is going to receive. So I think that's that first piece. Make sure we have everyone involved who could be impacted. And I can tell you right now, there's not an aspect of your organization that cannot gain value from AI in some way. The next piece is to do a holistic financial evaluation. And this is a little bit about the tool that we'll show you. Now, when you're calculating ROI, there's nothing fancy about this tool about calculating it. I'll tell you that right now. But what most organizations do is they're not honest about how are we evaluating things from a financial perspective. If this was our team from an organization, you're going to have voices in the room that are louder. and they're going to pound the table, and they're going to get what they want over everyone else because they were louder and advocated for what they wanted. What we try to do is take that away and bring it back to numbers. And so you can actually effectively evaluate and be honest inside the room and saying, this is where the real value is, here's the real cost. So really going down and getting that total cost of ownership and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. I think the other piece here is making sure that we have an ability to track the value we're getting. Because what we don't want you to do is, yes, I'm getting value, but if it's not achieving the targets you expected, evaluating, do I invest more or do I invest differently going forward? Doesn't say abandon all the time, because if you are getting some value, you may want to double down. You may want to take additional dollars and try the next thing to actually get the outcomes you're looking for. And then identifying risk. There's always risk around AI. And I think somebody has brought up the conversation around what are some of the, if I'm putting my organization's information into an AI, if you're using an external AI, you're putting that out into the world. So I can tell you right now, we have very defined policies within our organization of what can and cannot be put into AI. And if you don't define that for your organization, your team members are using it today, and they're putting your organization at risk. So we have internal models. Our models never, any of our information never leaves our domain. We don't bring clients' information into our domain. So when we're using our AI, it can only be internal information. If we're going to leverage AI with a client, we have a separate agreement with that client that we're going to be using AI, and we'll be using the AI in their domain. So you have to be very careful about how you're using this. So I'd say right now, if anyone's using external chatbots and you're using your company information in those things that are not companies sanctioned, please stop. It puts you and your organization at risk. If you're a small organization and the risk is small and you don't afford to bring it in-house into your own cloud, that's a different story. But I'm thinking if you're with a larger organization, please be very careful there on the risk side. And then scalable execution beyond POCs. I can spin up POCs very quickly and prove base level value. That does not paint the full picture when you get at scale. And that's what some of the modeling in our tool does, is actually show you what we think the actual cost to implement. You'll have vendors come in and say, yeah, I can get you a POC up in 2 weeks. To actually implement something at scale can sometimes take 6, 8, 12 months. And now you're getting it for large organizations. You're getting into hundreds of thousands and into millions of dollars. If you're a smaller organization, same things happen. You need to understand the scale of what it's going to be used. So you can buy a package off the shelf, let's say for $8,000, but there might be compute costs. So if you're heavily leveraging that capability, you have to be prepared for that scale as you lean in. So I'll stop there. There was a lot of talking. Any questions there before I kind of move on to some of these concepts? Nope. All right. Excellent. So how do we actually bring you through this process? And this is where I would highly encourage you, regardless of the size of the organization, whether or not you want to place a phone call to Slalom and have us run some of these workshops for you, go through this type of a process. So one, upfront, explore. So you got a lot of ideas. Let's just take today. If you're like me, I came out with 3 or 4 more ideas that I want to think about. How can I leverage this? Right now, if you went into my personal PC, I've got small businesses that I run for Airbnbs. I've got a bitters company, so I make cocktail bitters on the side, and I make some software products. And so I've got Lovable that you saw on the screen earlier. So I've invested in Lovable. I've got Cursor, because I have 2 AI agents going against one another to interrogate their code quality. I use Claude Code to actually test it. So I'm constantly going out and exploring what's out there. How can I drive value for, 1, for my clients, 2, for me, for my small businesses. Think about all those ideas. Then you want to prioritize those. And this is where the ROI component comes in. Think about where you think you'll get the value and interrogate that value. This is another great use case for AI. In our tool, we built the tool using AI. AI enables the tool. And you can do the exact same thing. take each one of your ideas, put it into an LLM, and actually ask it, if you were to prioritize these, help me identify what is the potential ROI, what are some of the risks, what are all these components. It'll help you go through that process. Go through it and tell your consultant and have it interrogate your information, because it'll actually go through and interview you just like we would. It'll ask you about some of the core risks, how's the quality of your data, what are some of the costs, what's the willingness of your team to adopt. All of that will come in. And that's part of that evaluation piece. So AI maturity, it's not just the ability to implement technology, it's about the ability of your organization and your customers to adopt that information. And you'll be amazed at how difficult it can be, even within consultants, to get consultants on board with using AI, to getting your customers comfortable with leveraging an AI. I work in agriculture, trying to get a grower to use AI, that's an interesting challenge. And then lastly, mobilize. So once you've gone through the prioritization, you evaluated it, now you're getting down to mobilizing and actually executing. And so that's what we want to rapidly get you to, is to bring you through this process. You actually can get out there and actually realize value as quickly as possible. All right. Any questions on this process? Does it all make sense?
I have
Yes.
a question for you, and this is not so much in the process, but this strikes me as being really important for a business to understand what their true priorities are and whether they're really solving a problem that someone's going to pay for, a solution. And it almost feels like going through this process would really help you refocus or continue to focus your business on what you really need to be doing and not doing. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And what I find is a lot of the best ideas, and so I'm going to take this in multiple ways. When we think about it, there's a lot of the productivity gains. I think those are the easiest and low-hanging fruit. So like a lot of organizations are implementing Copilot, because that just speeds up the method of business. But then you want to actually figure out, well, what's that next tier? Most organizations aren't going to go from productivity to changing the world, doing that moonshot idea that's going to revolutionize the industry. But you do want to get to that point where you're differentiating yourselves. And I think that's where the big value starts to come in. So getting all facets of the organization to get in that room and think about what are those ideas that could really differentiate our product. What are we bringing to the table? What are we bringing to our customers? And sometimes those customers are internal. An example I'll use is going back to agriculture, which I often do. One of our clients has about 1,500 field employees. And these are individuals that actually work hand in hand with growers. And one of the key things that growers are trying to assess is they'll get a soil sample and they know what seed they're going to grow the next year, and they're trying to figure out what nutrition plan how do I need to condition my soil with fertilizer for the next year based on the seed that I've selected. And now we built them an AI engine, and this came from the field saying, hey, I wish I had better insights of what to give to my grower from a recommendation. And so they come in now and we pull in all of their soil samples. We have 20 years of history on that field, that physical land, and they tell us what seed, and it goes through and actually generates a custom nutrition plan for each acre of land, each farm, the farm, the field, and what they call a management zone. That's inconsequential, and it maps that out. And they can bring that to the grower and say, here's your tailored plan just for you, and here's the cost. And then they give them 3 options. They say, here's the lowest cost version, here's what we recommend. Oh, but by the way, if you want to maximize yield, you could potentially do this, but here's some of the risk on the cost per acre. So that's where you can get, from a differentiation perspective, they get to go out there and have this information pre-printed for them. And none of their competitors have that right now. So it's a big step forward. So you can think that's something they do every day, but now it's a differentiator.
I'll
Yeah.
add one thing onto your comment. You'd be surprised how often we get clients that just want to hire us and give us a bunch of money to come in and do a thing.
Right.
And then we ask the very simple question, why would you want to do that? And they look at us like we have 3 eyeballs, because the price they're willing to pay us for this thing is substantial, right? We're paid on if we do a good job and how much a customer buys. So Joe was saying we turn away business often, and sometimes we don't get the business because we ask why. They can't answer that question. We say time out, let's back up. And then we go through the process, we still take the money, but we go through the process of making sure it's strategically aligned. Do you know what your business is going after? Do you know why this makes sense? Do you know why this is the next move?
That's why they're paying you though. That's the real part.
Toss said consultants aren't needed anymore, partly true, but yeah, we would challenge you to think
Just do
about
health differently.
exactly
Yes.
what you're saying. So you're 100% spot on.
I'm not a consultant.
Me either, I just think it more sure.
Perfect.
I have a question.
Yep.
If you drill down maybe one level on, say, AI investment decisions, I kind of, my mind internalizes it almost into three branches. There's AI for productivity / operational excellence. That's an investment the company would make.
Mhm.
Then there's you may be developing an AI product. That's what you're trying to sell. That's an investment. The third piece is you have a product where AI is like an element of that product.
Yes.
So are you talking about all three, if that makes sense, or?
Yeah, I think you should be thinking about at this level across all of those. There's a lot of organizations that have gone out, and I think with not really paying much attention of it, they bought Copilot licenses and they threw them out there. And the organization is not getting the value out of Copilots. Is everyone, when I say Copilot, is everyone, okay. And they're not realizing the benefit of the cost, that monthly spend. And think about how little improvement you actually need to get for $30 worth of incremental value per employee. I mean, that's a really low barrier. And that means, for me, every day I'm using AI in my general workflow. And that's across all acts except for PowerPoint, because I think is not where it needs to be to add value to me from a PowerPoint perspective. So I think that would be the one exception for me, but you're going to find that across the board. And then I think everything going up from there is mapping that out. It's like, where are we going to drive the value? But you have to be thinking about this across the board and maximizing that investment. Did that fully answer your question?
Yeah, so essentially it's all out, kind of
All up, yeah. So we'll drill into each one of these just a little bit. You'll see kind of pictures of the tool as we go through here. Because I'll be fully transparent. This is actually when we go in and propose to clients to walk them through this. This is the same deck. I don't want to use this. Don't use this as a pitch. Take the core elements that are on like the right side. Don't worry about the tool. Because I want you to be able to go off and just do this regardless of the size of business that you have today. So when we think about some of the high impact opportunities, we need to think about where are your business and operational challenges. And so the best information, the best advice you're going to get are from your own team members. They experience your business day in and day out. They know where the opportunities are. They just may not know how to articulate them. So ask them, what are their pain points? What are their challenges? If you could take something off of their plate, what would it be? You'll uncover a wealth of information from your team. The next piece is from a leadership perspective. What are those strategic goals that you're trying to achieve? What are those objectives? How are we differentiating ourselves in the market today? So really start thinking at the broad level. And then where are the AI capabilities? When you mentioned earlier, like AI is not always there yet. So a great example in consulting. And within a lot of your engineering organizations, everyone's probably looking at agentic engineers. I use them. I'm building software on the side. I mentioned Lovable, I mentioned Cursor, and I use Claude Code. So I've got licenses across all three. I have each one has a specialization. I treat them as junior engineers. They can write code. It's not good code, but it's code. And does it work? Yeah, I can get it to pass unit tests. But at the end of the day, I have to actually go in and review that almost like I'm a senior engineer going in and doing doing reviews of the code and making sure it has high quality and going back and having to rework the code throughout. And so the capabilities are getting there, but they're not exactly there. You saw the AI images that you saw today. You can tell they're AI. But each iteration is going to get better and better. So we have to understand where the capabilities are today and match that to these outcomes. think we'll jump on to the next one because I want to be aware of time and yes.
To what degree does kind of the change management and process reengineering and things like that go into making that kind of a high impact decision, right? Because implementing a tool without redesigning processes is oftentimes kind of foolhardy, right? And
Yes.
it's a big waste of money.
Yeah.
So like where in this process do you do that?
I think it should be one of the components when you're looking at the total costs is what is the change, adoption, training components. All of that has to be baked in. So that is an incredibly important part. An example I'll give you is for an oil and gas company. They operate rigs across North America and the Middle East. They've got rig managers who are out there on a daily basis, and part of their process was going through the rig manuals and understanding for that specific rig that they're about to go on and turn on, every single part that's been changed out on that, all the sub-equipment that's there, and then mapping the team against it to make sure everyone's certified against it. They would spend 5 to 6 hours a week of potentially productive time doing that. These are rig guys. They don't want to be using computers. They don't want to hear about AI. They're trying to extract minerals out of, mainly oil, out of the ground. And to get them on board, well, what we did is we went through an interview and said, what's your biggest pain point? Well, it was spending all this time reading PDFs and digging through on my computer. And so we came back and said, look, we're taking all that away. All you have to do is use your phone, ask it what you're trying to get, and it's going to give you a report out of that information. And so they went from 5 to 6 hours down to about 30 minutes a week getting the information that they needed. We didn't talk about AI. We didn't tell them it was AI. We didn't mention it at all because we knew that would, one, create fear, and it would create confusion. We just said, all we're doing is changing your process. Instead of going into a shared drive to look at PDFs, you're going to come in, you can either type it or you can ask a question on your phone, and it'll give you a report out at the end of the day. And so I think it's a lot of those things. You have to think about that impact and really know who your users are. I mentioned growers. Growers, they say they don't like technology. Go into a tractor. See how many screens are in a tractor. But it's also, think about it's like auto steer. When they go into the tractor, it's driving itself, but it frees them up to focus on what's really happening, what matters. What matters is what's happening behind or in front, because they want to monitor everything that's going on. And they want to have eyes on the ground. And so it frees them up to do those things. So it's really making sure that change management piece is in the forefront of understanding the value to not only the organization, but to the individual. And then some things are going to be worse with any technology implementation we do. So be honest with them. Hey, we're gonna streamline these 3 things, but now you're going to take on 2 more. And be honest with the trade-offs of each one of these technologies.
I've got something to add to this. Where I've seen success personally with this stuff is when you start implementing AI into the plumbing of the business. The stuff that isn't sexy, the stuff that takes a lot of time, like reading these manuals. I have seen company after company adopt so quickly because it takes this big painful job away. I give examples, I still won't take apart.
No, you're good. Yeah, so I'm trying to. You're my timekeep. So
Yeah.
I have a habit of talking, so I do apologize if I'm talking too much. All right, we'll jump to the next one real quick.
And real quick,
Yep.
I mean, when it comes to change management, I think whether you're using Cotter, ProSci, AdCar, whatever it is, if you're not thinking about change management on day one, like you're already off.
Right.
I'm not telling you something you don't know, but it's mind blowing how many companies don't put change management in the same breath as the first original idea of AI or whatever else.
And it's always the first thing cut from the consulting budget, right?
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And we push back quite hard on that.
Yeah.
Because we know at the end of the day, you gotta be happy. If you don't know how to drive the new Ferrari, who cares you have the keys to a new Ferrari? You're gonna
That's
go
right.
wrap it around the pole.
So going down on the ROI side, so when we look at this, the readiness, that is the change piece. And so that's the business readiness component for here. So what is the overall value? Let's weigh out the risks, the overall readiness, and that's who's receiving it. It's your technology readiness. So is your IT team ready to take this on? More specifically, is your data team ready? for what's going to be asked of them. What's your overall data readiness? The level of effort, and then cost. Why did I highlight cost? There's a lot of costs within AI that fall outside of traditional cost models. We used to build out technology. We would understand, here's the server space, here's the actual development cost, here's what we think is the ongoing maintenance cost. What people forget about is if AI takes off like we think it will, the usage costs and the inference costs can accelerate rapidly, and they can quickly get out of control. So if your product is extremely popular, your costs can go out of whack very quickly, and you can lose that ROI. When you're modeling that out, think about those worst case scenario. It's a great problem to have. You have an extremely popular product that the business loves to use, but it could have unintended consequences from a cost perspective on the back end. So I think those are just the key things to make sure you're thinking about each of those as you're building out from an ROI perspective. Okay. All right, on maturity and capabilities. So this is a little bit more advanced, and this is something I recommend for as organizations grow. So if you're a small business, a lot of these things are probably going to be too heavy-handed from an investment perspective, but from a larger organization, I do want to hit on these because you might be able to pull across all business types, pull in some of those key items. So one, strategic alignment. Big or small, you need to make sure you're making your investments in AI that are aligned with your overall business strategy. And that can be productivity, it can be differentiation. I think that is absolutely key. Customer and market adaptability. Are your end customers ready for this? So, and I forget the vendor's name up front, they had a voice answering service. Those are incredibly helpful for all sizes of businesses. So if you have a small business and you cannot pick up the phone, having something can actually pick up in a human voice, the customer will never know that it's actually an AI, and it can have a question, it can answer almost all questions if you prompt it and give it enough back-end data on your product or service. Governance is absolutely key. So you have to manage AI within your organization. So if you do not, regardless of the size, if you're a small company, create a policy for your employees on how you're going to use AI. What are they allowed to do? What should they not do with company data? If you're a large organization and you do not have this in place, I would walk home from this session and say, we need to start thinking about this now because the security risks, the risk to your customers is tremendous if you don't have that in place. Setting up a team that actually focuses on innovation and R&D. And this could be you. So when I think about my bidders business, I do all of my own R&D. And this is how I rapidly prototype concepts. I actually do it for potential bidders. I actually have a separate agent that goes off and is constantly trolling through different publications, trying to find out what new flavor profiles are doing, what are bartenders across the United States, what are they experimenting with, and it comes back with suggestions on new bitter flavor profiles. So for me, it's a fun side project. I get to think about chemistry instead of consulting, which is nice. Things about workforce management, going back to the change component. So how are you going to manage this with your workforce? Because there's a lot of fear. And if your team members are not afraid of AI, I think afraid, well, I think it's a fair term. We should be concerned because if you choose to ignore it, you will be left behind. I think the people that shouldn't be afraid are the ones that are adapting it and integrating it into their workflow. And I can think of very few industries where that's not going to have an impact. When we think about even plumbing and electricians, we have a client right now that we're working for that does all the electrical within data centers. And when you think about their business, you're like, well, they're putting in physical wires. Yes, but when they're engineering that out, they're running that through models today to make themselves more productive. From a workflow management perspective, on assigning team members and scheduling, they're using AI. So almost every industry is going to benefit from this component. And then data analytics. This is one that people forget about. You have to have Woo! All right, I gotta run. I gotta get real quick here. So we're gonna. All right. I talk too much. I'm not gonna outline all of these because I want to hit the rest of the last component here. So the key thing here is think about where you want to be. We always recommend that you start with productivity tools. Those are your co-pilots. Most of the things you saw this morning, you can adapt those as an individual. Then moving on to differentiation. So this is how do you take what your business is doing today and making it better, more efficient. Taking those ideas from your team and how do you leverage that into something that'll set you apart, like that agricultural thing with the nutrition, the soil nutrition. How does that differentiate your business? And then disruption. This is that moonshot. Now, how do you change an entire industry or create a new industry by leveraging AI? So I think that's kind of the path we generally try to get customers to go down. Specifically, we have a lot of customers that get excited, like they just want to move to disruption. That can be very costly, and you'll oftentimes fail. And we do not recommend going down that path early on. That's when we actually have to turn away a lot of stuff because people get really excited about potential, and the reality is it's going to be a much slower, fast but slower pace than some businesses want to take. All right, and I think, yes. Yep.
Do you find that ML AI is better at creating differentiation and then generative AI is better at creating disruption?
I don't think generative AI is at the point yet. Well, yes and no. I think there are some areas where generative AI is doing true disruption. So we looked at some of that from a music perspective this morning. It is creating where there's a new space where there never was a real market for that generation. I think differentiation, it's a combination. I think a lot of our heavy lifting, so if I look at the example I gave earlier on that nutritional analysis, that's traditional ML, but the front end to it, we're using generative AI on how they interact with it. So it's a combination. So a lot of these things, and if everyone's not familiar with that, so we've talked about LLMs, that legacy machine learning component, which is just getting the computer to learn these algorithms, it's much stronger not using an LLM at processing and doing analytical calculations. I guess is the easiest way of saying it. And that's when you're really getting some very powerful, deep outputs based on oftentimes structured data. Yes.
So I had asked Jonathan, and he basically told me it was like it's too soon, it's too early, to get that kind of how AI is actually helping with small business startups, those sorts of things in the retention, because small businesses tend to fail within the first year, 3 years.
Yeah.
Right, for Jonathan, but the retention that AI is going to help have small businesses have.
And from a retention, like customer retention, employee?
Longevity.
Yeah.
I should change that to longevity. How it's going to be successful, it's going to maintain that success.
I think a few things that I would think of there real quickly is like, one, I think you have the productivity gains you can get as a small business. You will get the advantages of hiring multiple firms by leveraging AI instead of paying those dollars. So you'll get that benefit that's coming out there. My R&D team on the bidder side of the house is an agent, which I don't have to pay anyone else to do that. I get research from across the country that's coming in because I can tap into that and it's completely free. I think there's those types of things of giving yourself scale at a very low cost is going to be key.
So that they can have lasting success.
Yes, yep. And they're constantly innovating because you're seeing things that others aren't because you're leveraging that information. Just a couple examples. Did you want to? Yep.
No, I was told we had till 2:30, but apparently we're out of time.
Yep, we're out.
Yeah.
I apologize for talking too long. Hopefully that was valuable. If there's any additional questions, this last slide is just showing you that significant value. This is trackable ROI. from some of our clients. Obviously, these are the large scale ones, but you can get great efficiencies out of leveraging these capabilities. And thank you for
And,
attending. I
Real
appreciate
quick,
it. Yep.
we did want to show this tool that I was so proud to show today that didn't happen. If any of you want to see it and see how it may apply to your business, take my business card and Joe, don't shoot me.
Yep.
We'll jump on a call for 30 minutes to an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Just walk you through it. We charge clients a lot of money to use it. We'll let you use it for free. Give me a call.
Yeah.
We'll plug some data in. We can do it in real time. And we'll take care of you since we didn't get to show you the tool today. So
Yeah,
you want to play around
absolutely.
real quick, call us and we'll take care of it.
Yep. Perfect.